Our Wednesday night regulars here. I'm not so regular. I'm still coming down from the wedding. I'm here, but I don't know if I'm 100% or 80% or 9%. At any rate, short but hopefully meaningful series we're starting tonight. The undercover Passover, the Passover that you've been bypassing. All right, in 2.5 weeks, I'm having a beginners program here. We're doing a Sunday sushi brunch mock seder. If anyone feels that they could still, benefit from that, fine. If not, please pass it along for anyone who you think would. That's more designed for beginners who are not even familiar with the seder or really the ABCs of Pesach or Passover. But really, this 2-week series, I want to concentrate. I feel most of the people who come to these classes have years of experience already with Passover and with Sdarim and so on. And I wanted to key in on a couple of topics that are still a little bit esoteric, still not so fully appreciated, still not well understood. And I'm beginning tonight with the Song of the Sea, Prophecy for Dummies. Okay, what do I mean by prophecy for dummies? There's a very, very striking statement in Chazal, in our sages, about the parting of the Sea of Reeds and the Song of the Sea. And that is as follows. Ra'asa shivcha al hayam, mashlo Yecheskel ben Buzi. A maidservant, what's called the lowest social strata of the Jewish people who made the exodus from Egypt, perceived at the Sea of Reeds things that the great prophet Ezekiel, Yecheskel ben Buzi, did not see. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, the prophecy of Yecheskel, of Ezekiel, is known as the Maaseh Merkava, the works, the acts of the chariot. And it's supposed to be a prophetic vision of, as it were, Kaviyachol, God's divine throne room. And it's the most overtly mystical prophetic vision that's in the Torah. I mean, we can imagine, we're not prophets ourselves, but we have some intellectual conception of what prophecy must be like. And we understand that it must be a tremendously spiritual / mystical experience. Well, the granddaddy of all mystical prophetic experiences was that of this prophet Yecheskel. And we say that if you want for just to up that, to make it a little bit arch and harmonic, the complete idiot guides to personal finance, or Microsoft Windows for Dummies. You know those book series. That's where I took the title. Prophecy for Dummies. In other words, you didn't have to be Yecheskel ben Buzi. You didn't have to be somebody who had worked at it. If you were a member of the Jewish people making the Exodus, you had a prophetic experience that was preeminent, that exceeded anything that any subsequent prophet ever had. So much so, this is a good starting point, a good departure point for tonight's class. Open your Chumashim. We're not going to start with the parting of the Red Sea. Always, Mrs. Bennett. The question is if I can interrupt you. That's the question. Okay, go ahead.
I tell you that when I was a young child, I felt a little bit jealous that I knew that I wasn't Abraham Avinu or Yitzchak. But Hashem talked to them, and here Hashem doesn't talk to me, so I don't have it so easy like they had it, because they have direct instruction from Hashem. Right. Then as I got a little bit older, I am today a little bit older, not such a young child anymore,
okay,
I realized that when I have a thought in my head, it's Hashem puts it there, so it's really talking to me. I feel so good. Okay,
the truth of the matter is that you're hitting on a very interesting subject that I want to explore a little bit more deeply tonight, and that is the interplay between prophecy, that is to say, revelation, perception, I see God, and yet I have to have faith in God. Okay, we're going to be talking about that tonight. So, you have a relative advantage over the patriarchs. The patriarchs also had to have faith. We'll get to that, God willing. Okay? All right. Here. I want to go to the Ten Commandments. Okay? Take a look at page 353. Okay? 353, we don't have to go very far. We're not doing all 10 commandments. We're just doing number 1 here. Page 353, verses 1 and 2. Okay, there's a big 20 in the margin in chapter 20, verse 1 and 2. God spoke all these words, saying, I am God your Lord, who brought you out of Egypt from the place of slavery. Okay, so all the commentaries just about ask the same question. This seems rather parochial, right? This is God's big moment. This is, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up now. Right? This is it, right? Why are you being so particularist? Why are you being so parochial? I'm the God who took you out of Egypt. How about I'm the God, creator of the cosmos? I'm the God, creator of unseen worlds. God of heaven and earth. What's this that I took you out of Egypt? So there are many, many answers, but the classic answer that Rashi provides is as follows. Because they had a similar God perception at the parting of the Red Sea, of the Sea of Reeds, and there God revealed himself, metaphorically speaking, as a young man of war, and here at the giving of the Torah of Sinai he's revealing himself like an old man suffused with mercy. I'm translating the Rashi for you. So that people shouldn't think, heaven forbid, that there's a duality, that we're polytheists, there's more than one God. God is identifying himself, even though you see a different image of me now, I'm that same one who took you out of Egypt. And in particular, which part of Egypt? Which part of the Exodus? The parting of the Red Sea. Not the 10 plagues, the parting of the Red Sea. I'm starting with this to show you, what an incredible level of prophecy we're talking about. Equal to, if not superior to, what happened at the giving of the Torah at Sinai during the 10 Commandments. That's why God is giving his calling card. I'm the same one that took you out of Egypt. Don't they make that mistake that there was one that took you out of Egypt, and he's just part of a pantheon, and I'm the senior partner in the firm, so to speak, who's appearing to you now. Okay. Fine. It's not an accident. We always come here with two books. For those of you who are not familiar, who may not do the morning prayer service every day, or even if you do, maybe you don't say it complete. It's not an accident. Take a look in your Art School Sidurim. Pages 78. Or actually, let's do the English, not the Hebrew. 79 through the bottom of 81. Top of 79 through the bottom of 81. Almost the top of 79. Okay? This is called the Song of the Sea. Okay? And you'll notice that at the Song of the Sea, Dr. Rimler, there's still a good place, plenty of good seats available right here. The Song of the Sea, welcome back, by the way. Nice to see you again. The Song of the Sea, okay, is the crescendo, if you will, of the section of the davening called Psuka de Zimra, the verses of praise. Right? This is our warm-up exercises for the recitation of the Shema and its blessings, and the actual nitty-gritty business of prayer itself. The way we get ourselves into the proper frame of mind to do that is by reciting these verses of prayers. That's the structure of the morning prayer service. And the crescendo of it is a repetition, a daily repetition, 365 days a year, weekday, Sabbath, holidays, Rosh Chodesh, doesn't matter. This is part of the morning prayer service, the Shira Sayyam. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is sensitize you to the centrality in Judaism in general of the event of the parting of the Red Sea, and of the subsequent prophetic revelation that evoked this shira, this poetry, this song that was sung afterwards. Now, within the context of Pesach, we have to understand as follows. Don't tell me I didn't bring down the main part of my notes. That would be bad. Give me a second. And I didn't. I'm going to have to wing this.
There is a white note.
No, that's just a place finder. Okay, your choice. Do I run up and get my outline, or do I talk? Okay, all right. Can we pause this thing? I don't know if it pauses. Let's. Hopefully.
Can I get a feeding?
No. I'll be down in 30 seconds. That's embarrassing. No, you're not going to know where it is. What it is, where it is. Can you guys insert a commercial in there for that break? And now a word from our sponsor. Just kidding. Okay. All right. first let's get the storyline and understand the storyline, okay? Everyone knows about the Seder. Seder is a big deal, okay? Outside of temple attendance on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Yizkor, it is probably the most observed Jewish ritual going. It's convivial, it's family reunions, people get together, extended families, people host big sarim, and so on and so forth. So everyone knows what's going on and understands the holiday aspect of the first day of Pesach. Or if you live outside the land of Israel, the first 2 days of Pesach. But what about Shvi Shel Pesach? We know that there are intermediate days where many of the prohibited forms of creative activity that we don't do on Shabbos, you are allowed to do during those days, called Cholo Shel Moed, the mundane part of the festival. But then there is Shvi, the 7th day of Passover, and Achron, if you live outside the land of Israel, the 8th day of Passover, which really is just a rabbinic repetition of the 7th day. What's that all about? What that is all about is, it's the anniversary of the parting of the Red Sea. Okay? That's what, if you want to know historically what happened on Shvi Shel Pesach, on the 7th day of Passover, and what gives it its sanctified aspect, it's like a Shabbos. You're not allowed to do anything that you wouldn't normally do on a Shabbos, except cook and carry whatever you could do on a holiday. It is the celebration of the parting of the Red Sea. And there's an organic connection between the two. Okay? The Talmud, especially the Jerusalem Talmud, calls the parting of the Red Sea Gemar Gulasam, the end of their salvation, their exodus, whatever you want to call it. In other words, it really would have been all the razzle-dazzle, all the 10 plagues, all the preliminary.
Excuse me, you said
liberation.
The salvation? No,
Yeah.
Salvation is helping, no? Salvation.
Being saved, being released from slavery.
The beginning of salvation.
The 7th day, the parting of the Red Sea, that they went through Kriyas Yamsuf, that was the end. The beginning of being saved was when they left Egypt. But until the Egyptians were drowned in the Yamsuf, and until they were safely on the other side, they weren't really saved. They could have been returned to slavery. Okay? So, it's part and parcel. That's the main thing we have to understand. It's part and parcel of Passover. The prohibition against eating leavened bread still applies. Even though, again, historically we think of the prohibition against eating chametz, against eating leaven, as having to do with the first day of Passover. We all know the story. They had to leave in a hurry, and their doughs didn't have time to rise. Nevertheless, we see it's forbidden throughout Passover, up until the 7th day. So it's not a new holiday. It's part and parcel of the first one. We say in the Siddur, I'm going to show you where. You don't have to go too far. Still in the weekday service. Take a look on page 97. This is the closing benedictions for the recitation of Shema. It's right when we're about to segue into Shemona Esrei, into the prayer service itself. Take a look on page 97. You see where it says in bold print, like 7/8 down the page, Hashem shall reign in all eternity? Okay. Look right above that, 3 lines above there, where it starts Chazan. With a new song, the redeemed ones praised your name at the seashore. It doesn't say the redeemed ones praised your name when they left Egypt, when they left Ramses. All right? At the seashore, they're called Geulim, they're called redeemed ones. In Hebrew, it resonates much better. Shir Chadash Shibchu Geulim al Sfasayam. They weren't Geulim, they weren't truly saved or redeemed from slavery until they were standing at the seashore. And to draw a parallel, it's kind of like Shmini Atzeres and Sukkot. It's true we don't have a Seder on the 7th day of Pesach, but just like on Sukkot, we say that there's a connection between Simchas Torah and the first days of Sukkot, even though you don't have to sit in a sukkah, you don't have to shake a lulav. The mitzvahs masiyos, so to speak, the rituals aren't there, but it's one organic holiday. The kedusha, the sanctity in time that pertained at the beginning of Sukkot is still there by Shmini Atzeres / Simchas Torah. Similarly, the kedusha of the 7th day of Pesach is of a piece with the first day of Pesach. I want to share one thought before I move on to the next topic.
Did you finish about the song, what you want
No, not at all. Not only I didn't finish, I didn't start. They finished being saved, but I didn't start speaking about it yet.
Because we were there and we said, really,
What?
we were there and then you said, turn the page.
Right. Even with an outline, I'm disorganized. You don't know that yet? You've been to enough of my classes to know. I'm disorganized even with an outline. Okay. So, there's a famous vart of the Kedushas Levi. This insight alone is worth the price of admission, like I like to say. You know, if you look anywhere in the Torah, you will never see the word Pesach. You will never see the word Passover referring to the holiday. Pesach in the Torah refers to the sacrifice that the Jews brought the night of the Exodus. But never is the holiday referred to as Pesach. That's a phrase that was coined in the Talmud and in the Medrash. The oral Torah, we call the Passover Pesach. Throughout the Torah, it's called Chag HaMatzos, the festival of matzah, of the unleavened bread. Why is that? So there's a tremendous insight from the Kedushas Levi, the great Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, one of our early Hasidic masters. He said as follows: we know that our relationship as a people with God is really one of two lovers to one another. Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, is all built on that allegory. And when you're in love with something, when you're in a truly loving relationship, you're always looking at your significant other. You know, in the paraphrase John F. Kennedy, ask not what your lover can do for you, ask what you can do for your lover. Right? Or more to the point is, you always feel like you're gaining more from the relationship than what you're giving into it. That's if things are going good. If the relationship is not dysfunctional, if it's not busted, you're always looking at it as, you've given me so much. I'm not looking at what I've given you, you've given me so much. And that's how it is with God and the Jewish people. God in His Torah refers to the holiday as Chag HaMatzos, because the matzos was an act of almost eloping by the Jewish people. As the prophet Jeremiah says, Zacharti lo chesed nurayich, avos k'lo asayich, lechtech achrei b'midbar beretz lo zerua. I remember the ardor of your youth, the love of your nuptials, running after me into the desert, into an unsown land, a wilderness. It was an act of faith. Walking with matzah, it's 2 days provision for who knows how long we're going to be away from civilization. That was an act of unbelievable faith and almost like reckless abandon on the part of the Jewish people. So that's what God calls the holiday. What we call the holiday is Pesach. We remember what God did for us. When we were idolaters and we were on the lowest rung of spiritual development and we were stuck in Egypt, you had the Hashgacha Pratis, you had the divine providence, the particular divine providence, to play leapfrog, to play hopscotch from one home to another, to bring the plague of the firstborn on the Egyptians and to leave our homes and houses untouched. That act of attentiveness, of attention, of love, that's what we remember. That's what you're putting into the relationship, and that's how we call it. So I just want to raise a point now that, I don't know, if time allows, I hope to get to at the end of the evening. It's also striking that in the Torah, this event is never called Kriyas Yamsuf. Okay? Let me show you what I mean. Kriyas Yamsuf means literally, God forbid, if there's a death in the family, you tear Kriya. Never heard that before? Okay, you've got to rend your garments. You've got to tear something. Kriyas Yamsuf means the tearing, if you will, of the Sea of Reeds. But that's not what it's called in the Torah. That's what it's called in the Talmud and the Medrash. In the Torah, I'll show you what it's called. Take a look on page 325. I'm actually going to read one line in the Hebrew from 324. So those of us who are literate in Hebrew can corroborate this nuance in the language. Okay, I'm looking at verse 16. Okay? The Hebrew reads on page 324, verse 16, V'ata harem esmatcha unetei es yadcha al hayam uvka'ehu. V'yavo b'nei Yisrael b'starch hayam b'yabasha. The English reads, raise your staff and extend your hand over the sea. You will split the sea. Now, splitting, okay, Usually in English it's called the parting of the Red Sea. This splitting has the nuance of meaning as if somebody would be chopping wood, taking cords of lumber and swinging an axe over them. That's what a bekia means. A bekia means when you split something that's an organic whole. Tearing something is when something is woven together that really wasn't whole in the first place, and you're kind of unraveling it. That's really what it means to tear a fabric, unless you're tearing it on the seam. When you tear a fabric in the middle of the fabric, you're taking something that really wasn't an organic unity to start with, and it was integrated, and now you're disintegrating it, if you will. Okay? So I just want to point out again that the same way that you have this contrast about the holiday in general, that God calls it Chag HaMatzos, the holiday of matzah, and we call it the festival of Passover, so too when it comes to the parting of the Red Sea, the Torah itself calls it B'kiyas Yamsuf, and we call it Kriyas Yamsuf. Right? The difference between splitting a cord of wood or tearing a fabric. Okay, maybe we'll get to it again. Again, for those of you who are literate in Hebrew, look at the end of Pasuk 22. Vayibaku Hamayim. It doesn't say Vayikaru Hamayim. Trust me on this one. Okay, you can comb the Torah as long as you want. You will not find the phrase Kriyas Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf, which every Jew in the world refers to this event by Kriyas Yamsuf, that's rabbinic coinage. That's something that came out in the Talmud and the Medrash. It's not the Torah.
Why did the Talmud call it that?
So I'm telling you that I want to, hopefully, at the end of the class, say something along the lines that Rabbi Yitzchak Berditcher said about the contrast between Pesach and Matzos. Okay, we'll get to it. Okay. Now, something that's true of every Jewish holiday is, now I said, maybe I was misleading before, when I said it's the anniversary of the parting of the Red Sea. The seventh day of Passover is the anniversary of the parting of the Red Sea. Jewish holidays are more than anniversaries. You know, when I was a kid growing up, we had Washington's birthday, we had Lincoln's birthday. Some efficiency expert decided, probably because of Martin Luther King Day and Earth Day, maybe there were too many holidays, losing too many work days. Let's just have a President's Day, all right? Somewhere in the middle between Washington's and Lincoln's birthday, we'll have a President's Day, okay? We don't do that in Judaism. We don't say, well, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is a little inconvenient, let's make it 6 hours, We don't do that. And the reason for that is because God, the giver of the Torah, the God of history, the creator of the universe, creates textures in time. Just as certainly as topographically, okay, and in the physical world, there are places that have cold climates, there are places with equatorial climates, and certain activities are more suited to one climate or one topography than another. Time has a texture too. We know this in the physical world. There's a planting season, there's a harvesting season, and so on. In Kedushas Hazman, in the metaphysical world, in the unseen texture of time, okay, there is a time of liberation. Okay? There's a time for conquering God's enemies, a.k.a. Purim. Okay? There's a time for affirming national identity and the miraculous, a.k.a. Hanukkah, and so on and so forth. These historical events did not happen coincidentally or haphazardly, and then we just celebrate an anniversary every year. These events happened when they happened because they had to happen. Because the creator of time invested that time with the power for these things to happen then. And hence, it's not just a dry commemoration every time we celebrate a Jewish holiday. If we relate, if you will, if we try to gear ourselves to get what we can from every holiday, from every Kedushas Hazman, what's going to be, I want to go skiing, but I show up to the slopes with no skis and no snowboard. You're not going to have a very fun time. All right? The terrain alone is not enough. The time of the year alone is not enough. You've got to be prepared for skiing if you want to ski. Right? So it goes with Jewish holidays as well. If we prepare ourselves spiritually for what the time has to offer, we can gain quite a bit from it. So, this is probably no more evident than on the holiday of Passover. We all know, if we've ever attended a Seder, it says in each and every generation, a person is supposed to view themselves as if they themselves made the exodus from Egypt. And a lot of what we do at the Seder, right, is about, so to speak, role modeling. Okay, we're play acting, right? We recline because we're supposed to be like princes and gentry, that that eats on those little divans, right? And the 4 cups of wine are about re-invoking the 4 ways that the redemption was expressed prophetically. And so there are many, many things that we do in the Seder that are about not just remembrance and commemoration, but actually reliving it. Feeling like I'm making that passage from slavery to liberation myself. Yes, Dan?
Isn't the essence of all of Passover
Yeah,
freedom?
right.
So, to my way of thinking, I would think the holiday would have something that title in it, the celebration of freedom, something that, I don't know, that we recognize, the children recognize. You said we call it Passover. You said in the Talmud it's called, in the Festival of Matzah. I would think freedom would be the overall theme of the holiday. The matzah is right, the parting of the sea is right, but the basic premise is we should remember that we were slaves and we're free.
Right.
And freedom should have a
Okay,
highlight.
you're 100% right. Okay, and suffice to say that we get into a semantical, philosophical dispute about the definition of freedom. Okay, but let's put it this way. Let's look at both names of the holiday. Okay, one of the most constricting things in our lives is time. Okay, we're all slaves to our yesterdays. So many of us feel that we can't break out of our past and our past behavioral patterns. That's one way that we're slaves to time. We're also slaves to time is because we're only here for 70 years, 80 years, 120 years, however long it is. And it's very regimented and, so much to do and so little time to do it with. We're slaves to the clock. We can't just take our sweet time about doing things and take as long as we want, to get things done because we're limited, right? The whole idea of matzah is a conquest over time. By not requiring rising, if you will, by not needing that fermentation process that bread normally needs, it's about compressing time to the point as much as humanly possible to its elimination. That's first of all. As far as the holiday of Passover, calling it Pesach, calling it, having to do with the hopscotch that God did, that's also about what it means when we feel oppressed by oppressors. However you want to understand what the Egyptians were doing to the ancient Hebrew slaves in Egypt, the idea of eliminating the oppressor, okay, but recognizing the difference between the oppressor and the oppressed, that's liberating. That's what happened at the plague of the slaying of the firstborn. Okay. So now, the Beis Avram, one of the early Slonim rabbis used to say as follows, going with this theme of what Jewish holidays are all about in general, said, let me see if I can quote him here, if I got it right. He says that there are many things that, according to Jewish tradition, are similar to the parting of the Sea of Reeds, or the way it's usually put is, as difficult a miracle as that was. What makes one miracle more difficult than another is a good question unto itself. But he says that what a Jew can gain on the night of Shvi Shel Pesach in particular, not the night of the Seder, but the night of the 7th day of Passover, when what we're really celebrating is the parting of the Red Sea, is all of those things obviously they gain to the parting of the Red Sea, or whatever our sages say is similar, create some kind of an equation similarly. So I want to share some of those ideas with you. One thing that our sages tell us is that kasha lezavgan kriyas yamsuf. It's hard for people to have lasting and meaningful relationships. Zivig, a shidduch, okay, is as difficult as kriyas yamsuf. Anyone who's ever attended a Sheva Brachas, I'm like ODing on homilies, on talks on this topic. Every Sheva Brachas, drasha talk starts with kasha lezavgan kriyas yamsuf. It's difficult to make a shidduch as the parting of the Red Sea. So I have it coming out of my ears a little bit. But suffice it to say that on the simplest level, the classic commentary says is that just as it's difficult to take something that's really an organic whole and split it, that's how difficult it is to take things that are two individual units and bring them together in a permanent fashion. Bottom line is, we all know that if you ever pick up any of the Anglo-Jewish papers, that there's a shidduch crisis raging out there, even if people are not involved in the so-called shidduch crisis, but people have relationships that are very often on the rocks, or dysfunctional, or they'd like them to be better, or they haven't found that special someone yet, and so on. So something that you can feel and kind of draw a spiritual injection from on the seventh night of Passover is that thing, Kriyas Yamsuf. Another thing resonates, I know this was the last Clinton's campaign slogan, it's the economy, stupid, right? These are very tough times, right? The dollar is plummeting against the euro, and now there's a new toll, congestion pricing in Manhattan, and the subprime, mortgage meltdown. The economy is in ruins, pretty much, right? Everyone's having a tough time making ends meet today. Our sages tell us, Kasha mezonoso shaladam kekriyas yamsuf. It's difficult for us to get our mezonos, to get our sustenance, as it is to part the Red Sea. Right? So again, there's a special, if anyone wants to pray, if anyone wants to feel that they really need to turn to God. They've recognized their own limitations. It reminds me of the famous Kotzker Rebbe. Shlomo Melech, Solomon, writes in Ecclesiastes, Lo lachachamim lechem. We know the end of the pasuk. The race is not to the swiftest. But part of that same famous verse is, nor is bread to the wise. All right? So the Kotzker Rebbe used to archly say about that verse, says, you know why? Because God says to the smart aleck, to the wise guy, he says, you're so smart, earn your bread yourself. I'm not going to help you. All right? So when we come to that realization that no matter how smart and clever we are, and how we always thought we were going to, outfox the stock market or flip a house and then make a big killing or speculate on real estate, whatever. And sometimes, we come to that realization, as clever as I am, maybe I'm not so clever. Maybe there are things at work here that are beyond my control. That's another thing that we can key into on the night of Kriyas Yamsuf, of the parting of the Red Sea. But I think most importantly is this thing that I started telling Aidan before, is the idea that much like on Yom Kippur or on Rosh Hashanah, where we want to feel cleansed, we want to feel not prisoners of our yesterdays, we all have our little paranoias, even if we're not clinical, even if none of us have been committed to the psychiatric ward, right? But we all have, how does that old slogan on the t-shirt go, But just because you're not paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, right? And we all feel, somebody's out to get us, Our parents, our kids, our ex-husbands, our ex-wives, our employees, our bosses, the dean of admissions, somebody's always out to get us, right? There's always some outside force that we feel oppressed by. And even if we begin to flex our muscles a little bit, and we begin to, to exert our independence, I want to ask you a question, okay? You're living in the middle of the Cold War, it's raging, it's 1965, right? And somebody tells you like this, we can go two ways. A chicken in every pot, that could be one campaign. So I say, an 8-foot wall, lead-lined, 8-foot thick wall, lead-lined nuclear fallout shelter in every basement, I can give you that. Or I can give you nuclear disarmament. Okay? I'm going to sit down at the table with the Russians, we're all going to destroy all of our nuclear warheads. The US, Russia, China, if they had a bomb then, which option would you take? You want a removal of the threat altogether. You don't just want, the possibility to escape the nuclear holocaust. You don't want that threat hanging over you, right? That's the difference between the seventh day of Passover and the first day of Passover. The first day of Passover, we're liberated from the Egyptians. But they're still there, and they're still giving chase, and they're still trying to retake us. And I haven't gone into the details of the biblical narrative. It says the Jews split into 4 camps. Right? There were 5 synagogues, so 4 groups of Jews. There's got to be one synagogue that none of us walk into, right? But they split into 4 camps at the seashore. And one of the camps was saying, forget it, the game is up. Let's go back to Egypt and we'll go back to our slave life. It's better than dying. It's better than Jim Jones in Jonestown. There's mass suicide. This nut Moshe is asking us to do. Supposed to jump into the raging waters? We can't swim. So there was one camp that said, let's go back to slavery. So the Talmud Dvara is a book, Deborah's Palm Tree. It's available in a very nice English translation. It's a book by one of the great Sephardic Kabbalists, Rav Moshe Cordovero. And basically it's a book that's founded on the idea, what the Greeks called imitato Deo, what we call hadek midosim, imitating God. The idea that the whole regimen of Torah and mitzvahs and Musar and Midos development is really trying to become as godly, as much as we know about God, as we're capable of knowing about God, trying to become as godly as possible. And one of the Midos, one of the divine attributes that are described in that book is something called Visashlich b'mitzulos yam kol chatasim. You will cast into the depths of the ocean all of their sins. And what Rav Moshe Cordovero says is the biblical paradigm for this is Kriyas Yam Suf, the parting of the Red Sea. Not so much the parting of the Red Sea, but the way at the end of the parting of the Red Sea, the waters coalesced again and covered the Egyptian army and drowned them and ended them once and for all. That's the real liberation. Not you gave me an escape route. You destroyed the ones who were constraining me. And Hebrew etymologists point out that the word Mitzrayim, the Hebrew word for Egypt, is Mitzarim. It means constraining boundaries. I'm unbound when Mitzarim / is destroyed. The Sashal Mitzulas Yam means, in terms of a divine attribute, that when divine punishment is done, when the object of divine retribution is done doing its job, it's forfeited its right to exist. The Jews had to be in Egypt. There was some spiritual regimen and schedule that horrible, terrible slave experience had to be lived through, had to be experienced. But when the time was done, the instruments of punishment, the instruments of constraint, had forfeited their right to exist. That's what it means when we say that God casts our sins into the depths of the ocean. They're drowned. They're non-existent. They're not in the plane of our experiential framework anymore. They're not here anymore. That's the idea of that divine attribute per the Ramak. And the paradigm for that is the seventh day of Pesach. So again, this sense of not just like on Yom Kippur, that God has forgiven me. Not just like on the first day of Passover, that I feel like I've escaped from my yesterdays, I've escaped from the forces that are oppressing me, but a sense of total liberation. They're gone. The forces that are oppressing me have ceased to exist. That's the Kedusha of the seventh day of Pesach. Okay, I see. I'll take the question, but I see I'm only going to get about halfway through where I want to get through tonight. Hank?
Yeah. Rushed off and they're buried and
Right.
like they didn't exist.
Right.
But we ourselves, if we don't learn from the sins,
Right.
then we're destined to do it over. So even though that has taken place, there's a history that can repeat itself.
Okay, again, we're getting
That's getting deep.
we're getting into a Yom Kippur class over here, but what this really has to do with identity, not cause and effect. Not I sin, I'm a bad boy or girl, so God reacts, God punishes.
Right.
But there's a sin. What?
Did you put it back on?
Sorry. Yeah, it's on. It's been on the whole time. I hope. Looks like it. If not, we always have a Torah anytime to rely on.
I mean, is it
Okay.
understood that it's contingent also on forwarding and learning from that?
Okay, so again, you're talking more of a Yom Kippur theme,
Right.
and I'm talking about more this idea of being a prisoner of time, being a prisoner of my yesterdays and so on. All right, then.
Now, I don't know if my history is right. I'm going back to Jacob.
Okay.
Wasn't there some kind of promise, commitment made by God about the future of the 12 tribes that were going to be dispersed, wind up in Egypt, and that they would eventually...
Abraham, the covenant between the parts.
The covenant, right?
Right.
But wasn't something prophetic said with Jacob about the future of the 12 tribes and enslavement, and that God would rescue us and come to the...
No, that's Abraham, and that's the covenant between the parts.
So
It doesn't talk about tribes. It just says you should verily know that your offspring will be strangers in a land not theirs, and they will enslave them and inflict pain upon them for 400 years, and afterwards they will go out with great wealth. That's I think what you're referring to.
Right.
Okay, so go with that. So what do you want to? What do you want to? Right?
The promise was always there, and his promise is always there that he will rescue us, that he'll save us.
Correct,
No matter
and it's
what history, no matter what era, no matter what time,
Correct. But
You,
the point is, but there's a difference in terms of promises made and promises fulfilled. Okay, so that's what the seventh day of Passover is, really, the promise fulfilled. All right. Okay.
can I just say one other thing?
Yes.
You know, promises fulfilled. Each of us can believe that many of the things that we need and that we want are taken care of by Hashem.
Right.
And to be grateful and thankful. Some of us are always looking for things, and some of us are always grateful. You know, the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. If you want to see things one way, you can be grateful for every day. If you want to be unhappy and say, why is God doing this to me? That's the other way. And I often wonder why people, in general, why is it that one person can look at life and say, thank you, God, for everything you did for me today. And you could have a best friend and lover, and that friend always says, why is God doing this to me? What did I do? Why is he punishing me?
Mm-hmm.
How do you help that person? How do you help that person see it?
Okay, so let's go away from the script. I'm going to try to address that question in the context of the Exodus from Egypt. Okay. I'm quoting here from Rav Gedalia Shor, one of the great contemporary Jewish thinkers. He quotes the Beis HaLevi. And he says as follows. Just give me 1 second. I just want to find the right quotation. I'm going to try to address your point. Madam, Hamad base.
What's your take on it, too?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. My own.
Do you have any questions?
And tired.
Okay. Fine. Let's take a look at the Shiras Hayam, at the Song of the Sea. We could really look at it two places. We could look at it in the Chumash or in the morning prayer service. But since I'm a fan of Rabbi Kaplan's Living Torah, we're going to look at it in the Living Torah. I'll tell you in 1 second.
The song.
Yeah.
327. 327?
That's where it starts, but I have to find the...
Well, we may have another song in mind. But it says the song.
Okay. Take a look on page 329. Okay. 11, verse 11. Right? Who is like you among powers, God? Who is like you, majestic in holiness? The Hebrew reads, Mi chamocha ba'elim Hashem, Mi chamocha nera ba'kodesh. Okay, for some of you might know this from the morning prayer service on Shabbos. Mi chamocha ba'elim Hashem, Mi chamocha nera ba'kodesh. Right? We say it, we repeat it right before we say Shemona Esrei. Okay, it's a great praise. We're saying God is the mightiest of the mighty. Elam, the Kaplan translated as powers. Elam means mighty ones. Okay? Now there's a fascinating discussion in the Talmud that says as follows. It says that during the Babylonian exile, and the times of the prophet Ezra, okay, the Jews stopped praying this prayer. They stopped saying it in Az Yashir. They stopped saying it before Shemona Esrei. And they said, because we know God is an honest God, He doesn't want flatterers. He doesn't want people who are praising Him with lies. He says, you're not a mighty God now, you're a weak God. He says, Babylonians are oppressing your children. Where's your might? Foxes are prancing about on the Temple Mount in the Holy of Holies. Where are your wonders? It's a lie. I'm not going to stand up before God and say lies. And it says, the Anshe Knesset Hagdol, the men of the great assembly, returned the liturgy the way the metaphor of the Talmud is. They put the tiara, they put the crown back to it, they restored it to its former glory. And they said there's a play on words over here. Mi chamocha be'elam, who is like unto you, God? Among mighty ones? They inserted the word and they changed it to read Mi chamocha be'ilmim. And Elam in Hebrew means a mute. Ilmim is the plural form. Who is like unto you? Who can compare to you as a mute? A mute would mean like this. A guy comes up to me and he says, you know, Schwartz, you're fat. Okay, I can't really respond. It's true, right? You know, Schwartz, you're ugly. Debatable point. I'm not sure I'm ready to react yet either, you know. You know, Schwartz, your beard is black. Okay, I mean, now it's already slander. Red or white, take your pick, but it ain't black. You know? You know, Schwartz, your mother was a lot. Them's fighting words, okay? Put up your dukes, right? There's a limit to how much abuse people can take. It's generally considered to be a good midah in Judaism and a good social skill to kind of let the insults, you know, just have a thick hide, be like, you know, just roll right over you, right? But comes a point where you can't remain silent anymore. You know, a line in the sand is crossed, and then you've got to react. But what kind of control, what kind of strength, what kind of self-control and power does it take, not to win a fist fight or a shouting match with somebody else, but to be so in control of yourself that the meanest, lowest down provocation leaves you blasé, leaves you apathetic. You won't react to it. You won't give the other party, so to speak, the satisfaction of seeing you react. That's also a kind of strength. Yeah. It says that's the strength that God is showing, so to speak, when bad things are happening to good people. When the Jews are in the Babylonian exile, think of anything in our long tear-drenched and blood-soaked history. Okay? And God is holding back. That's also a kind of a strength. It's not a strength that we prefer. It's not a strength that we would like to relate to. We want God to flex his muscle to be the young man of war as he was at the parting of the Red Sea. Says the Beshalach as follows. It's unbelievable. Take a look. He's based on a Medrash. But before we go too far back, just one page back, 327. Okay? Moses and the Israelites, 1. Chapter 15, verse 1. Moses and the Israelites then sang this song. Now then, in the Hebrew syntax of the sentence structure, the first word is then. Oz. Oz Yasher Moshe. Then Moshe sang. Oz Yasher Moshe. Now, you think Rabbi Harold Kushner coined the term, why do bad things happen to good people? You think Idan's friend coined that term? You think even Job, part of the biblical canon, first read this, it's called the issue of theodicy, of the suffering of the innocents? No. Take a look at Moshe Rabbeinu. Take a look back. This is chapter 5. Let me find the exact page and verse for you. Give me a minute. This may take a minute, but it's worth the wait. Trust me. Is this? Meyoz Basil Pari. Okay, take a look at page 281. It's actually the last verse, verse 23. Last verse in chapter 5. Page 281. Everyone have page 281? Okay. Let me give you the historical background of what's going on over here. Okay. Moshe has had one of his early audiences with Paro. Okay, this is before the 10 plagues even started. And Paro's reaction was, you uppity Hebrew. Basically, he made the Jewish slaves maintain their quota of bricks, but they weren't allowed to have the straw gathered for them or deduct time for gathering straw themselves. So naturally, they couldn't make the quota. So they started getting whipped, and so on and so forth, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu is having a little, what we call consumer remorse at this point. He had to be have his arm twisted to be the prophet of God and the redeemer of the Jewish people. And now things are going awry. Things are beginning to go badly with the whole plan. So we'll look at verse 22. Moses returned to God and said, "Oh Lord, why do you mistreat your people?" Stop. Why do you mistreat your people? Why then? The glass is half empty. Innocent people are suffering. Why do bad things happen to good people? It's just a restatement of that question.
That goes all the way
Right?
back.
Right? It goes all the way back. Why did you send me? What are you getting me involved? It's one thing, why do bad things happen to good people? Innocent people die in a tsunami or something like that. It's another thing when our relationships get so complicated that our friends who think that they're suffering look at us as the instrument of their suffering. And that's how Moshe Rabbeinu was feeling at this point. It's a lot more poignant and personal kind of a question when you feel that you're part of the bad thing that's happening to the good person. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is asking. Now listen to these ringing words. As soon as I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he made things worse for these people. How does the Hebrew read? Umei oz. Oz. Okay, alliteratively, you hear it? The Song of the Sea begins with the word Oz. Oz Yashir Moshe. Then did Moshe and the children of Israel sing. Here it says, Umei Oz, Basi al Parai. From the time that I came to Pharaoh, it's gone bad. Says the Medrash, that Moshe Rabbeinu, before he started the Song of the Sea, okay? The Song of the Sea, God is, I'm saying, not the Song of the Sea, this episode, this point in the development of Exodus, God is looking like a wimp. God is looking like a loser. God is looking like somebody who can't tell right from wrong, and innocent from wicked, and oppressor from oppressed. That's how it looks.
Maybe
the bad guys are winning, right?
Looks like he cannot do anything.
Exactly. An impotent God and an unjust God, right? And this was really, in a certain sense, a crisis of faith on the part of Moshe Rabbeinu, on the part of Moses. So the Medrash says as follows. Moshe Rabbeinu said before God, God, I know that I sinned before you with the word Uz. This soliloquy, when I started complaining and bellyaching to you, I used the word Uz. May Uz basi al Parai. From the time I came to Pharaoh. Therefore, I'm turning around now and I'm going to praise you with Uz. Parenthetically, it's a big lesson in Teshuvah. Whenever we repent, we shouldn't just try to drop the old behavior. We should try to sublimate and ameliorate, and whatever we used for evil or wicked in the past, it shows we have the power to work with that, to do something with that, turn around and use that for good. If you can sin with the word Uz, you can do great things. You can do positive things with the word Uz. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing.
I'm sorry, I must be losing something in translation, so to speak.
Okay.
What Uz means then?
Yes.
Okay.
But if it's modified with a preface letter, mem, mayaz, it means from then. So it can mean past tense or it can mean future tense, depending on how it's conjugated. Okay? Fine. So the Beis Halevi says as follows. When the Jews were in Egypt, and Moshe Rabbeinu, their leader, they couldn't understand the divine M.O. during exile. Jews are oppressed, innocent people are suffering, innocent children are dying. It's hard to make any sense of this. God certainly doesn't look fair and kind and compassionate and powerful. None of those things seem to be happening.
The next paragraph.
But now that they were redeemed, it's not just said, thank God those bad times are over. And now the good times again. Now let the good times roll. Retroactively, now they understood, with hindsight, they began to understand the grand scheme of things. That is something we can't relate to. Again, if we had suffering, personal suffering in our lives, so we pray to God, end the sufferings, start the good times going. But it's, pardon me?
Holocaust.
You want to drown me in quicksand? I was trying to avoid that. Okay. Exactly, precisely. That's my point. This is something beyond our ken. This is not something that we can relate to until Mashiach comes. And trust me, I'm the child of 2 Holocaust survivors. We got Mrs. Ann Bennett here tonight, a Holocaust survivor herself. It would be almost blasphemous for me to say that there's some sense or overriding goodness, if you will, that came to the Jewish people as a result of the Holocaust. I'm not going there. Okay? That's only something that, when we can stand at a miracle on the level of the parting of the Red Sea and sing the ultimate praise of God and have the ultimate and divine revelation, now I see you. Now I understand you. Now I get the hindsight that's 20/20 as well. Says the Beshalach. It wasn't just a cute wordplay over here. I sinned to you with us. I'm going to do a mitzvah. I'm going to sing your praises with us. What he was trying to say was, Mi chamocha ba'elim, mi chamocha ba'ilmim. Who is mighty among the strong? Who is like unto you in strength? And who is like unto you among the mute, among that kind of strength, if you will? A strength that looks like impotence, it looks like weakness. You don't react because you can't react. You don't react maybe because you don't have the righteous indignation that's motivating you to react. Right? No. Now I understand. In retrospect, I can understand. As you put it was all part of the same covenant. It's all part of an organic whole. Your children will be strangers in a land not theirs, and they will suffer, and they will be enslaved, and then they will come out with tremendous wealth. It's all part of the same thing. I sinned before you by doubting your goodness, by doubting your kindness, by not being able to make sense of it. There's no rhyme or reason. Where's your might? Where's your fairness? Where's your compassion? Now I see. Now I understand.
But why the Holocaust?
No, I'm not going there.
That's another
no, it's not another issue. I'm not going there. It's not I'm not going there. Nobody can go there. When Mashiach will come, okay, and we'll have our second Kriyas Yamsuf, we'll have our second parting of the Red Sea, that's the only time that it's going to become clear to us. It's hopeless. It's an exercise of futility to try and make sense of it. Okay? 1 second. Okay. Let me just wrap it up with 2 things. There was a whole morale I want to say. What can I do? So much Torah and so little time. I'm constrained by time. You're constrained by time. We're all constrained by time. Maybe if we'll live through the Shvi Shal Pesach the way we're supposed to, with our matzah, with our skipping over things, maybe we'll be able to transcend time. But not tonight. Okay. Let me just close with 2 ideas. This interplay of revelation and faith. It says, by the Song of the Sea, the preamble, if you will, to the Song of the Sea are these words. Take a look back again on page 327. The last verse in chapter 14, it's verse 31. It's right before the song. 327, verse 31. The Israelites saw the great power that God had unleashed against Egypt. And the people were in awe of God. They believed in God and in His servant Moses. Okay? They saw and then they believed. So all the commentaries ask the same question. Seeing is not believing. I know the expression goes, seeing is believing. When you see something, you don't need belief. Okay? Prove to me that the internal combustion engine works. Okay? So I can go to the blackboard and I can draw you a piston engine on the blackboard and explain to you some elemental rules of physics. Or I say, come out here. I turn on the ignition and the car goes. Okay? I don't have to understand it. I see it. It's bechush. It's sensory perception. It's not a leap of faith. It's not. So the Chiddushei Arim and others say, we see from this that just as God is infinite, the levels of divine revelation are infinite too. And even the people of Israel who were prophecy for dummies, they had a level of prophetic revelation that was the greatest of all time. Like the giving of the Torah, where God's got to give His calling card. I'm the same one who took you out of Egypt and part of the Sea of Reeds. Like the prophet Ezekiel who's seen God's throne room. Nevertheless, there's room for faith. I can see, and I still have to believe. And based on how much I've seen, I can believe that much more. When I see your might, I can believe that you were there in the darkness as well. I can look in retrospect on the slave experience, on all that we suffered, and I still have to believe. It still may not make logical sense. Maybe when we're lucky, we can see how things fell into place in the vast eternal plan, as Tavi used to say in Fiddler on the Roof. But not always. Sometimes it still takes a leap of faith. But there's always that interplay between seeing and believing, and it goes deeper and deeper and more profound and more profound. And nobody, I'm in the Kiruv industry, I'm in, so to speak, in the outreach industry, and we always, we encourage our students to go to these Case for Torah seminars, and a lot of very fine organizations that do this. But ultimately, as my sainted Rosh Rav Yitzchak Hutner, one of the great Jewish philosophers of the 20th century, told me, he says, you cannot show on your fingers that 2 + 2 = God. It'll never work. There are no incontrovertible proofs. Rav Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin says that if the Greek philosopher Aristotle had been present at the revelation of Sinai, he would have explained it away. He would have rationalized it. So there's no God. This is, smoke and mirrors. This is, some extraterrestrial. I don't know. He would have had a way of rationalizing it. Just because you see doesn't mean that you don't need faith. You've still got to believe. And that's one of the things, again, that we can key into on the night of the 7th evening of Passover, when we're celebrating the parting of the Sea of Reeds, that interplay between seeing and believing. What we've made sense out of in our lives and our relationship with the divine should help us get and achieve that leap of faith where we need for those parts, those pockets of our life that are still obscured, that are still not clear to us. Another thing that we get out of the parting of the Sea of Reeds is, what does it mean? We say in the Haggadah, Ilu haviranu bayam b'sacha b'charav v'lo yishika tzaran b'sacha dayan. If God had passed us through the sea on dry land, but not drowned the Egyptians, it would have been good enough. What do you mean it would have been good enough? All right? So he says God could have drowned the Egyptians without parting the Red Sea in the first place. He could have pushed them in, or he could have caused a tsunami, and we could have gone on I know it's another religion. We could have walked the waters. Right? Could have walked the waters. We could have been, like it says, our biblical metaphor, I'll carry you like on the wings of eagles. What's wrong with levitation? What's wrong with that? One of the lessons of the parting of the Red Sea is God makes a way out of no way. It's impossible. I'm going to drown. I'm just overwhelmed by my problems. There's just no way out. Just when it seems most hopeless, you're hemmed in. The Egyptian army pursuing you from the back. The raging waters in front of you, there's no way. God can help you make a way out of no way. If you have faith, V'yaminu b'Hashem of Moshe Avdo, there's a way out of no way. And finally, the last thing, and I promise you this will be the last thing except for your questions. The Yesod Avod, another one of the great Slonim Rebbes. There's one part that was the parting of the Red Sea, the sea coming together again to drown the Egyptians, the song of the sea, and finally the last thing that the Torah talks about is what we call Bizas Hayom. The Jews pillaged the Egyptians twice. When they left Egypt, they quote-unquote borrowed vessels of gold and vessels of silver. And after the parting of the Red Sea, it says miraculously, the Egyptian army, went into battle with these gold breastplates and silver hilted sword handles and so on and so forth. There was a vast, bejeweled swords and other implements of war. These things all washed up on the shore, and the Jews enriched themselves from this. Incidentally, if you're wondering where the gold for the golden calf came from, that's what. You ever stop to wonder how a nation of slaves had gold to build a calf? This is what it's from. Okay.
I thought it was actually. I always thought that was when they were told to take all the money out of it. All the.
So I'm saying it happened twice. They pillaged them when they left Egypt on the first day, but there was a second pillaging on the second day. So the Yesod Havadah, the first Slonim Rebbe, once turned to his Hasidim on a Tish. It was a Hasidic celebration, the night of the 7th night of Passover, and he said, we're reliving, we're into that Kedusha. Who wants Bizas Hayam? Who wants that booty, that pillage of the 7th night of Passover? So one of the Hasidim said, Rebbe, you know what treasure I want? Vayaminu b'Hashem of Moshe Avdei. They believed in God and in Moshe, his servant. That's the greatest treasure. That's what I want from the 7th night. Amen. We should all be zayich. We should all merit that on this Passover. and the 7th day of Passover. And please come next week so I can get your goats. We'll talk about Chad Gadya, that enigmatic poem that's at the end of the Seder about the one kid goat. We'll try to examine that. Any questions, comments? Now we're not constrained by time anymore. There's enough.